Hello, I am Dr. Abhishek Kumar, and today with us we have a very special achiever, that is Vidushi. Vidushi has secured rank 1 in the prestigious Indian Forest Service examination 2016. The result was announced just recently, and Vidushi's success was certainly anticipated by all of us, the teachers, her friends, and she herself expected her clearing this examination. But rank 1 always comes as a pleasant surprise, let us say an icing on the cake. And today we are going to talk to Vidushi about how her preparation was like, what was her overall journey like, and she is going to share with us her experience, her strategies, in fact her entire journey. And I am sure when she shares her entire journey, her strategy, there would be thousands of aspirants who will be benefited from this. In fact, this is the purpose of hosting this talk. So, hello Vidushi and welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations on this stupendous success.
Thank you so much.
You have achieved a kind of success which is inspiring to millions of aspirants, and seriously for a real long time to come. Thank you so much for taking time and coming here to share your experience.
My school is the Mothers International School, and my school somehow, in my batch particularly, there had been very competitive students and very bright students in my batch.
Okay.
So that generated a sense of competition right from a very tender age of when we were in 6th grade, 7th grade, we would be going for different competitions. So a sense of competition had been created, and also all of us would try to perform our best. So in that sense, I was always a very driven person in that I wanted to achieve like the other peers I had, and it inculcated the spirit of competitiveness, which was very important, and it helped me with my engineering examinations as well as UPSC. And that when I would see my peers, they would also be striving hard, working towards their own goals, even in the private sector. So then I thought, okay, when I should work harder, and I think that really helped me through this examination process. Schooling, in my opinion, plays an important role also in the fact that the fundamentals and basics of what we learn get clarified once we are in school. So once you're starting this preparation, it is very important to get the fundamentals right. So if a student is not able to go to a good school, then at least when the person is starting the preparation, then the focus should be on the fundamental, the basic things which we study in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and also the personality development may be a little bit hindered. So I think once we are working on the preparation, then simultaneously we should work on a personality as well. So once these two things go on together, then I'm sure it's not that big a disadvantage as it is made out to be. It can definitely be overcome. I think the immediate family plays a very important role, as this preparation requires that we cut off, at least I had to cut off my friend circle. I had a very large friend circle while in college as well as school, and I was during the preparation only in touch with my immediate family, my parents. And when we are very bored and frustrated with the preparation, it is our immediate family that we fall back on for motivation, as well as they bear our tantrums. And if a person is lucky enough to stay at home, then all the facilities of home are available. So I think in the motivation aspect, nobody beats the immediate family, and I think it is very important to have a supportive family. So I went to Delhi College of Engineering, Delhi University. Actually, I decided a little early on that I wanted to appear for the UPSC examination while I was in my 2nd year or so, but I decided to start my preparation after my 4th year. And the decision to join UP to start the preparation was actually driven by the fact that my father is in the services, and whenever I would visit him when he was in the field posting, then I really liked the kind of work he did, and I could see that whatever he was doing was actually making an impact. He was taking into consideration different factors, and everything he did really changed the lives of people in little ways but very important ways. So I thought that if I went in for a private sector job, it would definitely be very high paying, and I would maybe tend to make an impact. But I think the scope for making an impact was much more in the UPSC. That is why I decided to go for it, and although my preparation started after the 4th year, the decision had been made much earlier. I was actually placed in a private firm, one of the big fours. But sir, and at times during the preparation also I did feel tempted. But sir, it is very important to remember that even if you're in a private sector job which is very well paying, then you're working for a particular company, for a particular organization. And at the end of the day, you might be satisfied, but for me personally, satisfaction would come from the fact that I'm able to help people. And so that is why, even though I would see the packages and I am aware of the fact that the government might not pay me so much, but I think the scope of work would be so vast and diverse that I would not experience a burnout, at least at the age of 35, 40, and I would get a variety. So I don't think I would get bored in this job. So that is why I didn't go for the private sector. It was a very important factor, as I have my earliest memories are actually very different, in the sense that once a leopard had fallen into a well and my father had to go and rescue along with his team the leopard. So my earliest memories are also of forest and wildlife. And then I had been in Delhi, but once I was in college, my father was posted, as I mentioned before. So I would go there, I would see, and I had an innate, not affection, I had an innate connection with the nature. So it did play a very important role, but so as in it cannot be the sole motivating factor.
Right.
It was an inclination, but I think the motivation has to come from within for preparing for the forest service or civil services in general. After my college ended, that was in 2013 June. So after that, I started my coaching classes and I started seriously preparing for the examination. I was very clear from the beginning that I wanted to appear for the Forest Service examination, and computer science, I'm a computer science engineer, was not an optional. So I had to first decide on two optionals which I would take. So the first thing I did was I had to look for a particular coaching for which I looked up evolution, and I chose the optionals of botany and forestry, and then subsequently I joined the classes. With respect to the NCRTs, I had to, in specific subjects like geography, I had to go through the NCRTs, as they are very informative, and they explain things very well. So I refer to them. But in other subjects like economics, in which I do not have a background, I found them to be little cumbersome. So I did not refer to the NCRTs. But in subjects in general, I had to refer to books. For example, sir, in history, I had to refer to the ancient NCRT, then spectrum for the modern, and medieval also I tried to read up the NCRT. Other than that, in geography, I had to go through Gocheng Leong, and also my coaching class notes. Economics, I was not able to read any book, so I had to go only with the coaching notes. And so science and tech and environment are something which you can cover up in general. So for that, I did not follow any book. And so in polity, Lakshmikant is the book I think which everybody follows, and so I followed Lakshmikant for that. For my optional subjects, botany and forestry, I attended evolution and the 4-month classes which occur. And for for the current affairs, I attended Vajiram and Ravi, the 9th month classes. For me, I needed a coaching because of two reasons. One, when it came to the optional, I did not have a background in the optional, because of which I needed to start from the beginning, and that was not possible for a computer science graduate to do, considering the optional was botany. So that was for the optional. And with respect to the current affairs, it was very important because I did not remember a lot of things which I had read during my school years. So for brushing them up, and also for realizing, for getting a guidance as to what is important and what is not important, I had to join it so that I could give a direction that this is important and this is how to go about it. And also, so once you go to a coaching institution, you realize you have peers as well as friends and the general competition. So it keeps you driven when you realize who you are actually competing with. So in that sense, it is very important. In my case, I did not have much time to do basic reading, and also my basic reading was, since I had forgotten a lot of fundamentals and essentials, so I could not do that. So I had to join the coaching, and then when sir would teach something in class, then I would go back home, I would read up on it and try to cover up some more things which maybe he would cover in the next few classes. So for me personally, that did not work. So I followed my own style of attending the classes first and then going back home and studying. With respect to the coaching classes, it is very important that whatever is taught in the particular class, particular day, you go back home and you actually read up on it, and if possible, with respect to optionals at least, then make notes out of it, because these are the notes which will stay with you throughout the preparation, and we never know how long the preparation is going to be. So in that sense, this is very important. And so I think revision frequently, like after 2 days or maybe a week, is very important for the retention factor. Otherwise, retaining such a large amount of information is not possible. When I was taking coaching classes, then self-study time was reduced because of the commutation and in general the travel time which was involved, and also I would feel sleepy after the class and tired after the class. But when I came down to self-study, then my routine would particularly be that I would have 8 hours of sleep specifically. I never compromised on my sleep. I would wake up depending upon what time I had slept after 8 hours. Then I would get ready, and then I would start off with the newspaper, and I would devote at least 2 hours, 2.5 hours on the newspapers in the beginning at least, because it was very important to get a foothold on the newspapers and also on to get a base basically. Then after that, I would start off with whichever subject I thought I was lagging in, or for example, I was very confused with history in the beginning and I could never memorize history. So in that sense, I focused a lot on history. So I would study then. My attention span particularly is a little small as compared to what is generally required. So I would just go around the house and maybe travel to other rooms and then come back and then have lunch. Then so again I would be studying in the evening, and then in the evening my mother would come, so then I would talk to her, chit chat for a while, then come back to studies. So I would take little breaks, but I have never been able to study more than 10 hours a day, because as it is often said that you need to study 12 hours, 14 hours. That personally, whenever I have tried, it has been a deterrent for me, because my concentration goes down, my productivity goes down. I work best when I'm not studying more than 10 hours. So I would focus on just sleeping properly and studying properly. And one very important thing which I followed was that the moment I was sleepy, I would go and sleep. Because if I'm sleepy and I'm still trying to study, then there's no point, because whatever I'm studying would not go to my head. So that was one basic rule I followed throughout my preparation. For me, personally, I think it is sufficient, because I have seen candidates who have their own ways of studying. For example, one day they might study 16 hours and then the next day they might not study at all. So that might work for them, but personally I felt consistency is very important. So 10 hours consistently should work, ideally. It is a very integral part of the preparation, feeling bored and also frustrated, and especially when you're working and at times you do not see the results coming out. So sir, in that sense, in my second attempt I could not clear the prelims of the examination and I was devastated. So in that sense I took a break. I did not study for a good 15-20 days and I gathered myself. And so it was very important to realize that you will eventually be rewarded, and we just have to keep going. Because it's a catch-22 situation when you realize that you can't study anymore, but the more you're thinking about not studying, you're actually losing out on more time, so you're actually coming farther from your goal. So you should just take a time off and think about it and realize that okay, this is what the examination demands and this is a testing phase, and the mental strength is very important. The moment we give in to it, that is where the problem starts. So we have to just keep going and remind ourselves that eventually we would be rewarded. With respect to history, in the ancient history, I refer to the ancient NCERT which is available in the market, and for the art and culture, there is a particular book by Nitin Singhania, so I consulted that. Other than that, my coaching class notes with respect to art and culture were sufficient. Then in the medieval, the NCERT is more than enough if one reads it thoroughly. In the modern, we have to, in the 1757 to 1857 period, I had to read this book called Grovers, because it gives an in-depth understanding of the situation. And also sir, the NCERT of that particular time is very important. And for modern NCERT again, as well as Spectrum. So sir, this is for history. So for economics, just the economic survey which comes out every year, because a lot of things we understand from that, and it's a classroom notes. So I personally did not have a background, so I could not read much more on that. And so whatever I would read these, I would revise them thoroughly so that they become an integral part of me. Because being a engineering graduate, these things were not common, like second nature to me, so I had to keep on revising them. And sir, in polity, classroom notes as well as Lakshmikant, I think that sufficed. So for these 4 subjects, I think these were the books to be followed. Forestry, primarily the class notes were sufficient, especially with respect to the areas where one can score. And so with respect to other areas, there was certain material given, and we were advised certain books, for example L.S. Khanna sir's books. So certain portions of those were helpful, but other than that, the classroom material is more or less sufficient. And if one reads them in detail thoroughly, then they can definitely fetch you marks. With botany, whatever was taught in class, and apart from that, the study material which was given, so I would read them, and in areas where I would get stuck, I would ask for the particular books if I could refer to, and particular books, for example in genetics I would be stuck, so I read up a certain book on that. But so other than that, largely class notes generally suffice. Newspapers have a very important role to play, and I think we should start reading the newspaper from the first day of the preparation itself, because the newspaper teaches us what is actually happening. The current affairs comes actually from the newspapers, and there is no way of getting around this. We have to, no matter what classes you join, no matter whatever summary you read, reading a newspaper, reading the article oneself is very important. So I refer to the Hindu, and during the preparation, in the middle of it, I shifted to the Indian Express as well. But primarily these 2 newspapers. Other than that, the magazines Yojana and Kurukshetra which come out, and I personally did not have time to refer to other magazines. But if one has time, they can definitely refer to that. But there is no way of getting around newspaper reading. With respect to botany, I did not leave any topic at all. I looked up the syllabus, and whatever was taught, I did all of that. And in areas which we had to prepare by ourselves, some small topics, I did not leave them out at all. With respect to general studies, again, when you look at the syllabus, then there are certain topics mentioned, and questions do come from that. So I read up on all of them, because sir, I am personally not of the type who can leave topics. I am not comfortable leaving topics. So sir, it might work for some, but personally I did an exhaustive study. With respect to botany, I would go back and make, because there were very essential things being taught in class, and supplementary material was given, and since I did not have a background, so I would go back and make amalgamated notes. But because that was the need of the hour for botany. But with respect to current affairs, there are a lot of areas where it is not possible to make notes. For example, there's a book which is called Spectrum. Now it is already in note form, it is very information heavy. So making notes does not make sense, and that is why I would just read the important things. I would highlight them and read them. And again, with respect to say Grover's, so the book itself is very exhaustive. Making notes would waste a lot of time. In the time we would make notes, we can go through the book twice and thrice. So sir, personally I did not make notes for those areas, but wherever possible, that a lot of, if in a book a lot of area was there which was not required, and very selective areas which I needed to be noted, I would note them down, but largely not. Both are equally important. Conceptualization is very important with respect to the civil services examination as well, because when you are writing a mains answer, then if we don't have the concept clear, then we will just be faffing in the answer. So I think conceptualization is very important, but at the same time memorizing is equally important, because there are certain schemes which come out, there are certain terms, certain acronyms which if written in the answer, they definitely tend to have an impact, and they maximize your answer basically. So sir, memorizing is important, but we should not solely just memorize and not have a basic understanding, especially in areas such as in economics, agriculture, land reforms. Until and unless we have a basic understanding, we will not be able to go about it. So both of them are equally important. It is just to be seen which area requires more of which of these two. With respect to the Forest Service examination, I think 1 year is more than enough, because we need to do two optionals and they can be done simultaneously. And especially if one is a graduate in a particular science subject, then it's all the more better for the candidate. And so the two coachings, if it is required for the optionals, can be done simultaneously, and then the current affairs portion can be covered, and during the current affairs portion being covered, we can revise on our optionals also. So sir, in my opinion, 1 year should ideally be enough if one is consistent in one's preparation. Obviously, as we go into the preparation, we become better each day. But at the end of 1 year also, I think we are equipped enough to take the paper, because when you're doing current affairs, then you're having newspapers also, you're moving with the static portion also, so it is doable. And considering that there are 8 months coaching takes place for current affairs and 4 months for optional, so all in all it's very much doable, and more so because before the mains there are 4 months available. So that is why in that particular 4 months we can cover up on the answer writing part also. But the earlier you start the preparation, the better. But 1 year, I think it's fine. If somebody wants to appear both for forest as well as civil services, then first of all the options need to be decided. And if I was suppose a botany graduate, then life would have been much easier for me. So sir, in that sense, I think the first thing should be done is that optional should be decided, and that should be covered up with, so that with respect to both civil services and forest, at least one thing is secured. After that, the preparation for the current affairs can be started. And so once the preparation for current affairs is going on, in the middle of it can be interspersed with the optional preparation as well. So, and so with respect to forest service, from this coming year onwards, the mains examination is after the civil services examination, which is a huge advantage, because in this process you are not compromising on either of them. So after a person is done with the mains of civil services, there would be ample amount of time to actually revise. So now the situation is much better than it was in the previous 2-3 years. Personally, with respect to answer writing, I was initially not very good at it. I did not get the hang of it. So then I realized that UPSC requires bulleted answers, and until and unless there is content, the answer is pretty much useless. So in that sense, initially with respect to again newspapers, the knowledge part comes in, and then organizing the answers is very important. So that comes only with practice. So in my opinion, when we are studying the current affairs and the general studies and the static portion, during that time only we should start, whenever we read a particular article, we should start thinking about how a question can come from it, and also what point should be there. Again, like when critically comment is required, then the positives as well as the negatives. So it has to be an inbuilt process where the moment we read an article, we should put it in a tabulated form, that okay, this is what I can write in the positives and this is what I can negatives. So sir, that has to be a continuous process in my opinion. Answer writing, in my opinion, should start as early as possible, and also more than writing it down, one should, when reading the articles, see the articles as to how a question can come from it, and also what one can write in favor of the particular issue against the particular topic. And once we start the answer writing, we realize that we really don't know how to go about it. And also considering in the mains examination, the time limit is very less, like around 7 to 8 minutes, during which time we have to think of an answer, we have to write it down, we have to underline it. If we do not practice this early on, then in the later part of the preparation cycle, getting a hang of it becomes very difficult. So I would suggest we should start it as early as possible, so that the process becomes easier as we go ahead in the cycle. I think UPSC requires bulleted answers and not paragraphs, because once we write in a bulleted form and underline, then I think that catches the attention of the particular person who is checking the paper. If we write in a big paragraph, no matter how great the content is, the examiner will not have so much time to actually go through it. So once we write it in an indented form or a bulleted form, personally I use a bulleted form, then I think that usually works with most of my peers as well. So sir, I would advocate a bulleted form. It is very important if when one is going towards the examination hall, then we carry thoughts like, okay, so this is the day I have been preparing for, all the study of 1 year comes down to this. The moment we start thinking like this, I think that is where things go wrong. We have to really get this thought out of the head and just focus on getting maximum number of questions correct. So just we have to shoo away all of the thoughts and just look at the paper and just think that, okay, I have to look at it, and whatever the question is, I just have to look at the particular question, take it question by question and not in a very larger picture. So the moment we think of it in a question by question format and just focus on getting that one particular question correct, then moving on, I think that really helps. Because if we start getting thoughts about how much time we have invested and this is all it boils down to, then I think that's where the problem starts. With respect to the Forest Service main examination, there were with respect to forestry, there were 4 days before that. So I tried to make maximum use of the 4 days. I revised everything. I went through the past year papers and then appeared for the main examination. And in the main examination, again, while sitting in the examination hall, it is very important to just focus on the particular paper and not think about how getting it right would make my life and getting it wrong would break my life. It is very important to not think about all of those things and just focus on that. And also in that, the practice which one has done in answer writing is very important, because we have to keep a watch and also make a target. For example, in the civil service examination, we have to answer 20 questions. So I mentally made a target that in 1 hour I should be done with at least 7 questions. So sir, that is the way, because the moment we are left with, say, an hour and a lot of questions are left, that's when the panic kicks in. So it's important to not let this happen at all and maintain a pace from the beginning only. With respect to the preliminary examination, first of all, when we look at a question, then we actually know at that instant only whether we know it or not. But at times what happens is that when you think you know it and you think that you got the answer very easily, then I personally tended to think that it's a trap question, and I would usually start thinking more and more and more about it and then eventually get it wrong. So it is important to have confidence that if you have arrived at an answer, then it might just be right. And secondly, with respect to prelims also, considering even half a mark is very important. It is very important that before entering the examination and while we are preparing, we make a strategy whether we want to go in for more accuracy or for more number of questions. Because if we go in for more accuracy, if we are very sure of ourselves, then yes, we could. But I made that mistake in my second attempt. I went in more for accuracy. I attempted a very small number of questions, and then even 2-3 questions which they went wrong, then that landed me in a non-selection. And this I avoided in my third attempt, and I ensured I did a decent number of questions, so that even if 3-4 go wrong, 4-5 go wrong, then at least I'm above the safe margin. So I think these things need to be decided beforehand and not at the moment decisions right in the exam hall. The Forest Service interview, I had PK Joshi sir's board, and the board was very cordial, and they asked me a lot of questions based on environment and forestry, and the theoretical portions such as conventional and biological diversity, then Ramsar sites, then the NPV, the net present value, CAMPA, and my hobbies have been wildlife enthusiast and photography. So a good number of questions followed from that. The DAF also had a few questions because I have been born in Chhattisgarh. So there were questions on Chhattisgarh, but they were very specific and I was unable to answer very specific questions. But largely it was a very cordial atmosphere, and questions I could make sense out of where the questions are coming from. For the Forest Service interview, I joined interview classes at Evolution, and they helped me tremendously in building the theoretical base, which eventually helped me in my interview, as a lot of theoretical questions were asked. Other than that, the DAF was very important to be prepared. So I prepared on everything which seemed to be of interest. For example, on my school, my college, as well as my hobbies, I prepared extensively on my hobbies, and also the positions of leadership which I had held. So the problems, the question which could come, for example, the problems I faced during them, what could have been better, and other things related to them. So all in all, I prepared the DAF very properly. Other than the answer in the civil services interview, the newspapers were very important, and having an opinion and a solid opinion and about the issues which are coming about, that was very important. So my hobbies have been photography, amateur photography, and wildlife enthusiast. So photography was something which I could not actively pursue, but whenever I would go to vacations with my family, then I would try to make the maximum use of them and pursue my photography that time. With respect to wildlife enthusiast, that is something which I could do while staying at home and between the studies also. As I would look up certain sites, I would try to collect a lot of information whichever interested me. But sir, other than these two, if you have some other hobbies, for example, which can be pursued at home, then definitely some time can be taken out when at leisure, when one is when one is bored of the studying process or one is tired. But other than that, hobbies which require a lot of time, they might not be possible to be followed because of the demanding nature of the examination. But whatever it was one's hobby, one should just write that in the detailed application form, as a lot of questions are asked and very detailed questions are asked to check if you are genuinely following it or not. And that is the time when, if you have genuinely followed it, it would help. But if you're faffing about it, then there's a very high probability of getting caught. So if you have one, it's good and genuinely write it, but there's no need to fake it. First thing was the persistence and also the consistency. And by consistency, I mean that I try to follow my 10-hour schedule to whatever limit I could at least. And if there were certain obligations, social obligations or certain holidays which I was going to, then I would try to ensure that the lost time I made up for it in some way or the other. So sir, these two things are very important in the preparation. Other than that, newspaper reading, we tend to get all sorts of notes and certain guides which would detail the things in the newspapers. But sir, there's no way of getting around it. We have to read the newspaper and read it in a very detailed manner. So I think sir, these things are very important. And other than that, retaining a positive mindset, because there will be a lot of times in the preparation when one would be feeling very low and down and completely disillusioned with the preparation process. So it is at that time we have to remind ourselves that things would work out eventually, and it is a long and hard process, and that this is a time when you're being tested. So this is the time when one actually needs to show mental strength. So having a positive outlook would certainly help in the preparation. If somebody was to start the preparation today, first of all, it has to be a very considered decision, as it is a very long process and it requires a significant amount of your energy and time. And so first of all, we have to be very clear, and you have to be very clear that it is self-motivation which will sail you through. You have to be motivated from within. And other than that, we have to be very careful in our planning process about how we intend to go around things. Other than that, the same newspapers and answer writing practice and trying to be as consistent as possible in the preparation would be a very good strategy to follow.